What is 97 years old, gives more than it receives, lasts forever?
Greetings.
Greetings. Nice to see you again.
Welcome, Leland.
Thank you.
Leland Cheung.
Leland Cheung.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the second time? No, third time you're running.
Third time running, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going for my third term on the city council.
And how many things have you accomplished?
That's a loaded question. I think too much to cover in half an hour.
You've been busy.
Certainly more than I can cover in 10 minutes.
We have to do what you can.
Yeah.
Well, tell us what you've been doing and what you hope for.
Yeah, so we've gotten a lot done over the last...
The most important things
yeah.
you're going to do in the next
Thanks. Yeah.
2 years?
So since I was first elected in 2009, I joined the council in 2010. Introduced a whole suite of initiatives, everything from single stream recycling, now working on a curbside composting pilot that's going to start in 2014, and I hope to get reelected to continue that throughout the rest of the city of Cambridge.
Curbside.
Curbside composting. So
How
you can
do you do that?
So you take your food waste and
Yeah.
you, instead of throwing it away in your garbage, which goes to a landfill, you put it in, we'll have some special metal bins which are more rat resistant, so it'll help starve the rat population, but then also it goes and helps become fertilizer to grow more food, which is better than throwing it in the landfill.
Is that all, like only for single family places?
No, it's going to be for citywide. So right now we're having a pilot. Eventually it'll be citywide.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also have had major historic zoning initiatives, one of which was on North Mass Ave, limiting the size of banks and requiring developers to, if they redevelop a property, put back in the retail that they take out. Have had zoning initiatives in Kendall Square requiring developers to fill retail with at least 50% locally owned businesses as opposed to just big national chains. Looking to expand those throughout the rest of the city in this upcoming term.
Sounds impressive. I was reading something here about Bridge Start, which is
Bridgestat, yep.
Bridge Stat.
I worked on that my first term with the police
Oh.
department.
It's supposed to stop crime. So how do you stop crime?
So basically, they use data analysis. So they can use data analysis. People call 911, or they have a crime that's committed. Now, instead of detectives having to piece the information all together, there's a statistical analysis package that can put all the crime together put all the facts together and figure out, help us figure out who the criminals are and where they're likely to hit next. So, for example, if in a neighborhood all of a sudden we get 3 911 calls saying, you know what, my car was broken into recently, when historically we don't get any, it'll immediately a detective will be dispatched to start looking into the issue, and immediately will redirect patrols. So it's a way of using data that comes in to start be a little bit more intelligent in how we deploy our police forces.
Yeah.
So
It's
did
not
that.
profiling.
No, it's not profiling. Just stopping
Okay.
criminals. Brought Hubway to the city, worked with the city manager on that. Initially was only going to be a Boston rollout, and made sure that Cambridge was right there when Hubway started, that we were rolling out at the same time.
You good?
Yeah. I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, I know you can. Try. So what are the most important thing you're going to try to do next time?
So for the next term,
Assuming you get elected?
assuming I get elected, I'm working on an open data ordinance. Strong believer in transparent, accessible government. I've been fighting for that. Instituted a rules change last term, which required that we publicly post any city manager contract before we vote on it. And for the first time ever, the contract for the new city manager wasn't just introduced the night of, or wasn't just a vote on the floor that night. It was actually introduced and put out into the public beforehand.
How far before?
The same normal schedule that we publish everything that comes before the council. Eventually, I'd like to lengthen that, but I think it's a step in the right direction and one I will hope to continue. So open data is about taking the data which the city collects, everything from the health violations of restaurants to where we're having jammed meters if that's opening in one place, but taking all this data, which might not seem useful, but it's right now just siloed and hidden within the bowels of the city bureaucracy, and making that available on a regular basis and a proactive basis to residents. One example, a person last year talked about unshoveled sidewalks and was able to map out where the unshoveled sidewalks were so people could replan their routes getting around the city. So, there's lots of ideas about how you can make residents' lives better with apps using the data the city has once we start making that data available. So that's a big initiative we have
Any
going
way
on.
to get the sidewalks to drain, so
Yeah.
we're not walking big puddles in Central
Oh,
Square?
absolutely, yep.
Yeah.
And actually, I have the highest clearance of CRS requests. So, like, if you contact me with an issue, you can visit my website, lelandcheung.com, to find all my contact information. We have one of the highest clearance rates for issues that are reported to me ever. So,
That's pretty impressive.
yeah, we work hard at it.
So how are the residents going to be able to have some impact on the development projects?
Well, I think, getting involved, making their voices heard. I think the
Will there
residents
be-
already have a huge amount of impact to development. Look at East Cambridge. The East Cambridge planning team has been very proactive about thinking what they want to see in their neighborhood going forward. They develop plans before developers even come in. And so when developer does come in, we're able to point to what they've done and the work what they've put forward as their vision for the neighborhood and say, you know what, we want that. So I think, when residents are proactive and think ahead about what they wanted to see in their community and come up with a consensus vision, the council it's really easy for the council to get behind that. I think one of the big thing you asked me what's up next term.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if anyone has seen the ads for the Boston mayoral election, but there's going to be
Not much. I've been focusing on Cambridge.
there's going to be a new Boston mayor for the first time in decades.
That's true.
And when on my first term, I had the first ever joint meeting between the Boston and Cambridge city councils in the history of the two cities.
Really?
Yeah. When I first did it, people called me crazy. They said, people are going to steal our secrets, or why we want to talk to that city across the river. Well, the reality is Cambridge isn't, we're not an island. We are part of an ecosystem. The challenges that we face in terms of housing, transportation, in terms of homelessness, in terms of creating jobs for people, they're not problems that are just isolated to Cambridge. They're problems that are really regional in nature. And we need to work with our neighboring cities across the region in order to find regional solutions to common
How
problems.
many cities are there across the region?
Oh, I mean, there's like hundreds, well,
big-
it depends on how big you draw the circle. There's about,
Yeah.
I would draw it within the immediate 15, cities neighboring and adjacent to the cities adjacent to Boston.
Really a lot of different governments,
Yeah.
right?
But I would say, I think that now they call me crazy when I first came up with the idea. But now that we have a new Boston mayor coming in, people are saying, oh, you know what, that's actually a smart idea, because we've laid the groundwork to actually do some really collaborative work.
It might actually work.
Yeah.
What kind of impact do you think it would have?
Well, I
What would be
mean,
the effect?
well, I do know that if we try to work without them, we are hindering ourselves. For example, when we now have partnerships between police. So if there's an event that happens anywhere in the area, Boston Police, Cambridge Police, Somerville Police can act as a unit and work together to stop something major from happening, as we saw recently. But we're trying to do that on a proactive basis, not just reactive to catastrophic events, but thinking forward. How do we housing is not just a Cambridge problem; it's a regional problem. I think everyone is feeling the crunch. Cambridge more so, but it can't just be a Cambridge solution. I mean, we can't fit all the housing in Cambridge that people need across the region. So we really need to work with our partners in other cities in order to figure these things out.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You have any particular thoughts about the surveillance issues? Cameras and stuff like that?
Cameras. You know what? I'm the kind of guy.
Keeping track of everybody and everything?
I was flying out of Logan a couple of months ago, and they said they were beta testing some kind of new system, and so they started asking me like, well, where are you going, and how long are you staying there, and how did you get here? What road did you take? Did you come by car? Did I come by cab? And I said, you know what? I'm going to opt out of these questions. You can just pat me down. I think that we want to have people want cameras in order to help catch criminals when crime occurs. But my standard, what I think about when I think about cameras in the public way, I don't want all that data just being easily transmitted to the NSA or to some government agency that's going to be able to put it all together and figure out, where Ann is going from day to day. I think about it as, if there's a crime that happens outside of a convenience store, and there's cameras inside the convenience store pointing outwards, or ATM cameras, you have to go and you have to get a warrant. You can go and get the tapes, and it's usually on a closed reel loop. So the tapes are being re-recorded. They are recording what's going on in the store in case the store is robbed, but it gets recorded back over regularly. It's not going off to some government agency or some being transmitted elsewhere. The police have to go through a really rigorous process in order to get access to that footage. There's a lot of transparency and accountability in the system.
There will be
some
people,
checks and balances.
Yeah, checks.
And I think
Anybody else going to have ability to see whether the police are doing it correctly, or?
Yeah, no, I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I think there needs to be I would think there needs to be checks and balances. I think there's going to be a lot of accountability. I think we need to have a rigorous and very high standards in terms of how people access that information and who gets access to it, and making sure that it doesn't just get fed into a domestic surveillance program. So.
Yeah, right. Tricky to, I mean, it's good when you use it to catch a criminal, but
Yeah.
when you use it to look for criminals that you may not think are such.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
So striking that balance is hard, and I think it's becoming increasingly more difficult with technology these days. I mean, you know, these things are everywhere, and you can't assume that you're not being recorded. And you know, I think that as technology progresses and as computing power progresses, the opportunity for people inside the government to abuse that power, and not for any good reason, just as a rote standard operating procedure is something that we have to continually guard against.
How long are you going to stay in Cambridge?
I'm staying. I'm settled down here. You know, I have a house, I have a wife, I have I'm invested in this community. So
There you go.
yeah,
Thanks, Lois, for coming.
yeah. Thank you for having me.
Anything else you want to add, or that you think is the most most important thing to you?
Yeah, no, I would.
To us?
You know, I think asking people again, please vote Leland Cheung #1 on November 5th. You cannot assume that any candidate is safe in PR elections. Every candidate is up for re-election. Every candidate is running for their seat. I've been running a really aggressive campaign. I don't take anything for granted. You know, people kind of tend to say that I'm safe because I've accomplished so much over the last few years. But once people start thinking you're safe, then if they don't vote for you, then you actually are not safe. And I think, you know, the other
What
thing.
is the effect of the vast difference in finances that the different candidates have?
You know, I think it has an effect. You know, it's incredible how much running a campaign costs. You know, sending out these mailers costs money.
How much does it cost?
Oh well, I'm very
You know what I'm saying?
I'm very cost efficient, so I try to reduce the cost of everything. But you know, calling people, you know, it's amazing how fast it all adds up. I really think we need to move to some kind of public financing of campaigns in this country. It's unfortunately that's not what we have. We have the system that we have, and I'll do the best that I can with it.
Yeah.
But personally, I'd much rather have, at the end of the day, who's paying for elections? The taxpayers paying for elections, and it may not be. You might not think that you're paying for it directly, but if you're buying, especially at a national level, this doesn't really happen so much in Massachusetts because we have very strict campaign finance laws.
Yeah.
But you know, nationally speaking, you're going to buy things from an oil company. You go and you buy gas, and you're paying that gas company, and then they're turning around, they're lobbying Congress and funneling money into campaigns. So you are paying for it at the end of the day. So I really think, you know what, let's cut out the middleman who's aggregating those funds and spending it to try and influence elections, and let's just have publicly financed elections where we have a level playing field and people compete on ideas. And
Can that be done at a local level?
They tried it in Massachusetts a little while ago. It would have to be done at a state level because the state is the one that sets the campaign finance rules. But at the state level, they tried it. Forget when. Jamie Eldridge was the only senator actually elected under that system, and then they defunded the account that. So it was no longer operational in the state, unfortunately. But I think that's where we need to move as a country. You know, to try and there's always going to have to be money in politics because you can't get just contacting people costs money. If you want to try and get your message out there, you can try running it. But I think, you know, I would rather have a level playing field where everyone gets the same amount, and then you can compete on ideas and how efficiently you use that money and how efficiently how effectively you communicate with voters.
We have to convince the Supreme
Yeah.
Court.
So I would say the last thing, you know, what people ask me, like, you know, what motivated me to get into city politics and why am I here and what am I doing? And it always go back to my father. My father actually immigrated from China to Cambridge in 1969. And I don't know if you were around in 1969. You don't look like you were old enough to have been there.
Oh, thank you.
But he,
I
you know,
wasn't there, I was here. I mean, I was there, so.
yeah. The activism he found on the streets was just so different and unique from everything he'd known from before that he wanted to instill in me an appreciation for, you know, the spirit of civic activism and how special it was to live in a democracy that he found here. So every few years he took the whole family back to China to visit relatives there and compare my life to theirs. And beyond the materialistic differences, what really struck me was, My cousin in China can't write an op-ed in the paper criticizing what an elected official does without risking recrimination against themselves or their family. They can't
here too, but-
they can't run for office because they think they have something different to add, without being a part of the party who's going to toe the party line. So democracy is really a two-edged sword. It gives us freedom and opportunity, but on the other hand, it gives us a responsibility to participate in that democracy, because you can't have a government for the people, by the people, if the people don't show up.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thanks loads.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, pleasure.
Good luck. You gonna win?
With your help, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. James?
Hey. Hi, Ann.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
you.
Nice to see you. I'll leave that on. No, I'll take it
Yes.
off.
See
So, how are you?
we get, oh well, whatever. See if you can get in the
Move
picture.
over this way a little,
Yeah,
get a little
that-
closer.
Yeah, that's better.
So,
So what do you,
well, Leland said something that I thought was interesting, which is, he mentioned the city manager's contract. And he said that he had helped arrange to make sure that it was published online. And then you asked him a follow-up question, which was, how soon? And Leland said the same amount of time as is usually the case for city council meetings. What he didn't say is that's only 72 hours. That's the Thursday before the following Monday's city council meeting. And I don't think that's anywhere near enough time, and I think Leland pretty much acknowledged that. He said he'd like to do better, but it's really not all that much of an accomplishment, I don't think, to have the contract for such an important position only available a few days before the city council vote on it. But what's even, to me, much more important than that is how the city council chose the next city manager to begin with. And what happened is that there were promises made to the public where members of the city council said, look, it's a very important position. The person who's been here for 32 years, Robert Healy, is about to retire. He was getting $336,000 a year, and we need to set up an open, robust process to pick a replacement. And after making these sort of public pronouncements, all of a sudden last December, a group of the city councilors came to some agreement, pretty much behind closed doors. They presumably had discussions with one another, and they lined up enough votes, 6 was all they needed, and then suddenly declared to the city, to the residents of Cambridge, to the taxpayers, to the people who've lived here all their lives, and others who have only recently moved here, that they had a better idea. They were going to name the next city manager, who was the man who had been the deputy city manager under Robert Healy for most of, if not all of, Robert Healy's tenure. And that's not the way I want to do business in
So
Cambridge.
how do you think that could be changed?
Well,
Is there a way to change
I
it?
think it begins, the way we change this is by electing different people. Sure, incumbents have opportunities to do things. I mean, if they haven't done anything, it's pretty disgraceful. I mean, they have nicely paid position of $80,000 a year. They have paid assistants if they want them. If they don't accomplish something, and if they don't have some advantages that come with incumbency, I mean, we might as well just scrap the whole system. But what I think we need to do is bring the community into this process.
Wow.
And
The real
there are
question
very
always is how to do it.
Well, yeah, how to do it is, what we can do is we can have a working group to hire, because now Richard Rossi is going to be the next city manager for another 2.5 years. And this next city council, it's going to be very important who the next city council decide and how they go about deciding who that next city manager is. In the meantime, we have to figure out how to work with the city manager we have and improve the performance of the city
Yeah.
in
He's-
a variety of
He's
ways.
not, he's not gonna be happy if you work too hard at finding somebody else.
Well, but he's sort of suggested that maybe he's happy with just this next 3 years, although I don't think there's anything in writing to that effect. So
Is he
my
close-
suggestion.
Is he close to retirement age?
Yeah, kind of, and he's been around for a while. But, you know, he might start to like it, and I wouldn't blame him necessarily in that position. He's
Does he
getting,
get the same income?
not quite the
that he
same.
did?
I think he agreed to, they negotiated a contract, and by the way, you should look at the contract that Leland was referring to. I mean, it is something like $315,000 a year. It's a little less than 336, but it's still
It's
a
still
pretty significant amount of money.
healthy amount.
And I think Mr. Rossi likened it to being the head of a big corporation. And I think that's an interesting observation or an interesting comment, because I think that's what's happening to Cambridge. Cambridge is becoming like a big corporation. 105,000 people now. Microsoft, Google, huge, just down, I can look down Main Street from where we're sitting here at the CCTV studios and see the buildings going up in Kendall, and they're going up just down the block from here, massive buildings that
You're
people
blocking my view.
people on the current city council who you all elect, people on this current city council have rubber stamped all of these huge upzoning petitions, these proposals to allow MIT and Forest City and these big developers to build these enormous buildings, to expand the zoning, to allow for bigger buildings, to allow for biolabs instead of residential buildings, to allow for buildings where they weren't meant to be according to previous zoning agreements. That's what's happening right down the street here where the All Asia Club used to be. So, you know, we can talk about Hubway, or we can talk about the really big, no pun intended, issues in the city, which are this enormous development and the impact that has, and how to get people involved. Great question, very important, not easy to do, always a lot of nice rhetoric about it, but the way to do it is to, I don't like the word empower, but let's use the word empower, to empower neighborhoods in very specific ways. Developers, if they don't get the approval of neighborhoods, the answer is no. If the zoning changes don't meet with the approval of neighborhoods in some established democratic way,
So the
the answer
neighborhood
is
has
no.
to have a,
The neighborhood
has to have a
there's a
governmental
way
structure?
I think there's a way of institutionalizing the voice of neighborhoods, both in the process to choose a next city manager and in decisions about zoning and development proposals that would be a little more rigorous than is currently the case. Yeah, you show up at a planning board meeting, you know, people talk
Are
until
those
they're...
meetings open?
Oh, of course they are, yeah.
Yeah.
The planning board, and by the way, the planning board are selected, are named by the city manager.
Right.
The city manager has tremendous power in the city. The city manager names all the heads of all the boards and commissions, who then are sort of, you know...
And the department heads as well.
beholden,
right?
and the department heads who are sort of beholden then to the city manager for their jobs, for their careers, for their nice salaries. There's an enormous payroll in the city. And I have to say, sometimes I wonder what people really do. I mean, looking across the street here, there's this Jill Roan Brown Plaza, and there's a space there where people on their bikes come roaring through there. I mean, they created this really nice public space, and people ride their bikes like crazy right through this nice new public plaza. And we have, you know, pretty significant police department, half of them paid over $100,000 a year. And we somehow can't seem to find a way to, with the city council, to get the attention of the city administration to focus on some of these things which would improve the quality of life and the safety and comfort for all the people who can still afford to live in Cambridge.
How long is that gonna be? I was,
I'm sorry,
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
I listened to your video.
it's kind of you. You
Yes.
may be one of only
No,
5 or
I'm
6.
sure many did. Anyway, I was impressed.
We
So-
need some canned laughter here, so I can pretend that there's like an audience enjoying this. But
Oh,
anyway,
well,
sorry.
we
Yeah.
have to assume.
Yeah.
They will be. They're gonna
Oh.
be, they're gonna be
They'll be
on
laughing.
CCTV's
Oh.
website, they're gonna be on
great.
YouTube,
Oh,
so
great.
don't
Well,
worry.
thank you.
They're gonna,
Yeah.
you're gonna get lots of publicity, at least for a few
Well,
days.
thank you.
So,
You were saying.
yeah,
You were gonna ask.
tell us the effect of the finance on the shape of the city.
The effective
Campaign.
finance.
Campaign.
Campaign. Well, here's one thing I would urge everybody to do. Regardless of who you like, who you support, what your feelings are about the city and the direction that the city could go in if we had a different city council, I suggest that all of your viewers go, and you also, if you haven't, go to the website of the Office of Campaign and Political Finance.
After I heard you, I went to the site and spent more than an hour.
And what did you see?
It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's a search
And
engine.
pretty frightening, actually.
It's a search engine that's easy to use, and you just type in the name of the candidate of one of the 25, or go through all of them if you want. Or if you're a contributor you may know of, Ratner is a good place to start, because the Ratner family, based in Cleveland, own a big real estate company called Forest City, and many, many members of the Ratner family write $500 checks. The legal maximum per year is $500.
Is that a state maximum?
It is. It is. And actually, I would disagree with Leland on this as well. I think we can do it locally. I think we can have our own public financing. They do it in Portland, Maine. I'm not exactly sure how they did it, but I think if they can do it in a nearby city in New England, we ought to be able to figure out in a smart, I mean, everybody talks about innovation. Can't we innovate in our political system, in our electoral system, in our community representation, getting back to what you asked earlier, how to get the community more involved without having to struggle so hard to be heard? It should be automatic.
Yeah.
So
Well,
go to
one-
the
one-
Office of Campaign and Political Finance website, and
What's the abbreviation?
OCPF dot whatever it is,
OCPF is
mass.gov or
probably
something
enough.
like that.
Yeah.
And you'll find it, and just type in the name, Leland Cheung, for just as an example. And you'll see. Now, I'm glad to hear Leland talking about public financing. And I think I take him at his word that he's interested in that. But what Leland doesn't tell you is who he's getting some of the major, he's got a lot of money, and who is he getting some of that money from? Not all of it. Citizens give money, residents. But a lot of times the money comes